Welcome back to Goldenridge. Today we're building a modern coastal high-rise neighborhood, refining our downtown skyline, updating the train station, and rethinking our rail yard district. So let's get to work. All right, so the first thing I want to do today is there's two little things I want to look at downtown real quick before we move out to the coast and start developing there. So first thing I mentioned last time was the way that this main building sits. I mean, I really like it being the centerpiece, but it is a little short, and I feel like it really divides our left and right and just doesn't make this feel like the most cohesive downtown area. So, but a lot of people also really like this building, and I love this building. So we're not going to get rid of it. What we are going to do is get rid of this park, and we're going to take this guy and just move it forward, because I actually think that looks even better. The little park area was nice, but I think having this right at the forefront of our downtown skyline really, I think is actually quite a bit better. And then that leaves us with a lot of space here. So I think there's a few, basically what I want to do is then fill this out with some other buildings that can help kind of bridge the gap between our kind of left and right side. And hopefully it won't feel quite so left and right, and it'll feel a bit more balanced. So one building I really liked was this one, but I'm not sure how it's actually going to look. We would have to do a little rearrangement of some of our cross streets because it is a little big. Probably just get rid of Orchard Crossing right there. So let's just take a look and see if that might actually, I don't think that really overshadows our main building here. And we can probably also make it a little bit brighter. I think that was another thing I did when I kind of updated the skyline, was just made all of the buildings a little whiter and a little brighter, and I think that really went a long way for our city here. Also, let's speaking of brighter, let's get some brighter light here and get rid of these clouds. I think just makes things a little easier to see. So that is a very substantially large building, but it does feel like a decent centerpiece building. And let's just real quick set that off to the side. We'll just drop it over here for a second and just real quick take a look and see if there's anything else that kind of might fit in there nicely. You're already using that one. Let's see. That's not bad either. And it's not quite as overtowering. Or something like this. I think that's actually just a taller version of that one. Something like that actually might be a little better, and we could drop two in kind of like that. I don't know if the color scheme quite works. I'm not sure if we can change these darker colored areas. Let's see. Oh, we sure can. So it would be basically like that. I don't think using two of them I like, but that might be. This one just feels I mean, that's a giant building, and I'm not sure if I'm loving that. So we have option B, and then we can obviously get some other stuff in there. And let's just see if there's one more that. No, I don't think we want quite something that big. I just don't want the skyline to quite be that big overall. Let's see. These are all starting to get to the low, so let's just filter by. Maybe there's some of this from the Chinese pack, although these tend to get either kind of small like this, or suddenly they just get pretty massive. That doesn't really quite feel on brand. This one we're already using right here. That is obviously way too big and modern. And are we already using this one somewhere? Maybe not. That's not terrible. It's not like, doesn't really stand out a ton in a good way. That's kind of too big. That one we're already using. Same different version. That one's too big. That's quite a building. So, and let's, I guess really quickly we can look at just the high density residential buildings and see if there's anything big enough. Although I think having downtown centered around a big residential building is probably not super realistic. But if we can pretend that it's not. That's a little big. Oh wow. Yeah, I think one of those two, that's not bad actually. That is residential and not an office, but it does kind of look like it could be an office building. And let's see if we just kind of brighten it up. No, it's just a little generic. I think we're gonna have something in there. It has to be something special. I think maybe we do stick with this one, because that at least feels like, like a something that is fairly intentional. So honestly, I would prefer to have it back here, but I don't really think we can cut off. I mean, we could, I guess, but you'd have to go all the way around. And I think cutting this off makes a little more sense, since these are like one-way, kind of off of the highway here and onto the highway there roads. I think it does make more sense to cut off Orchard Street here. So yeah, we're gonna do that, and we're just gonna move this guy into place, and let's make sure that it's kind of centered up there. And I guess we can put an alleyway here, just so that there is some way to get through there. And yeah, I think let's also just move the sun into a bit more of a midday form here. Just get a little more balanced light so we can just see better. Yeah, I think that starts to make this feel, and let's see how it looks from kind of our good angles over here. I mean, it does cut off a little bit of these tall buildings from certain angles, but I think that really does make the most sense. Offices of a sushi restaurant. Wow, what kind of sushi restaurant has the biggest skyscraper in a city? They must be making some incredible sushi. That is hysterical. So yeah, I think that feels a bit better. And then the other thing I want to do real quick was our train station, which we don't have set up yet, but in terms of rail lines. But this is going to be like our main central station, and I switched out the vanilla one for this modern architecture one, but because it had more tracks, but it also feels a little underwhelming visually to be the downtown the downtown station of a big city. So I just wanted to look around and see if we can use these ploppable service buildings here, something like that, just to make it. Or that's not bad actually. What is that? Just the high school. That just already feels like more of like a big, like a real central station. Let's see if there's anything else. that we like in terms of just another building to kind of be, you know, the main structure here. That's a little crazy. That's not bad at all for like a more modern station. This would obviously be like a renovation, something that's new. Same with that. That would also be kind of like a modern thing. That probably is a little big. That's a little big. What was it? This one? That's pretty good for a modern thing, but I actually kind of liked, where was it? I kind of like that. I think that is actually, I think it fits pretty nicely, and it has a bit of a kind of traditional look to it. Let's see, can we change any of the colors in any way? Maybe we make it more of a brick kind of thing, just to match some of the other brick stuff we've been doing. Oh, that is more than brick. You know, just something like that. See what other colors we can play with here. No, I'll leave that. Actually, you know, I think maybe we do just leave it white. So yeah, that just feels like a bit more of a substantial building for kind of a real downtown train station. So we will get, a lot of people have had comments about buses and all that kind of stuff, and obviously we don't have any of the trains running. We will have all the public transit stuff. The only reason I'm hesitating is that I just want to get a bit more of at least kind of this area built out a little more, so that we know where we're going to want stops and, you know, what areas to service. So that's the only reason I kind of haven't done that yet, but I am eager to start seeing trains, especially coming through this little corridor. I think is going to be awesome. So yeah, so we have a bit of an updated Skyline here. We have a new train station. And then I also just wanted to point out that I did some detailing here along our highway corridor that I think I'm really stoked with. I was able to use this great kind of tiled stone texture to create these kind of retaining walls, and then fill them in with trees and stuff that line it and kind of act as barriers and decoration. And by doing kind of a row of bigger trees, there's a really, like here and here, by doing kind of a row of larger trees and then sinking in rows of smaller ones, you can see if you really look, they're just kind of jammed on top. But I think it really gives this like overgrown, hanging down look. Like I think this one, the way that this feels like it's kind of hanging down, really looks great. And it kind of reminds me of I don't know, some, maybe not even accurately, but like I think of kind of some Seattle stuff with that. So I'm really happy with the way that's all looking. And I also just went through and plugged in a lot of as many of the kind of green patches as I could. Like this area was all green, and here with some brick, just so that we're, you know, if we do show grass, it's more intentional. We don't just have kind of open grass spaces that kind of make things look unfinished. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about all this area. So now we can get rid of this. Let's take a look over here. So I think really I just was looking at this as kind of a Vancouver inspired coastline high kind of density residential, and want to try and find some more of the modern buildings that we can. And so let's take a look and see, like buildings like that's even a pretty good example. So I'm going to pause it just so we can kind of look at some buildings without you know, people moving into them and stuff, because that's probably a little tall, but I do want to see what options we have for kind of some of these modern buildings. I think some of the ones from the China pack also really had a good look to them. Let's see if we can turn this to a little, yeah, as soon as we make that white, that already starts to feel more like, yeah, that feels very Vancouver. If you look at Vancouver, there a lot of the, almost all the buildings they have are white, really bright, light gray, and then there's quite a bit of like a turquoise or teal kind of accent. I think a lot of it is just glass, but there's a very kind of uniform look around the whole area, and that's definitely something that I want to do in this area and keep it really kind of bright and modern feeling. So any buildings that aren't able to kind of take on that style, just, or that color at least, despite how they look, we probably will not end up using. So whoa, that's a big one. So that's a nice one. That I bet we can recolor and just get, let's see, get that red out of there. Yeah. And then let's see if we can make this, so we move this into that kind of dark, it's almost a green, you know, this kind of color is kind of a thing they have kind of going on. So this is a bit of what I have in mind and what I'm hoping to do here. So let's just find that one's great. Probably get, I think there's a few different sizes. Is that the one we already had in there? No, but these are just different versions of kind of the same thing. And that's not quite, I think more of these kind of sleek looking modern ones, I think. And then let's take a look at some mixed stuff and see what we have for kind of larger ones. These might not get quite, I mean, I don't want everything to be a skyscraper, obviously. So I think this is worth looking at. Probably this kind of a thing. It's really interesting though, in Vancouver, there's a lot of these kind of really modern stuff, and then mixed with even not too far away from even some like almost single family housing that are kind of mixed in, and really much smaller kind of apartments. So stuff like that. And there is a little bit of kind of older brick, you know, some of this kind of stuff, but not a ton. Definitely some of these kind of units. Probably nothing like that. This is probably a good one once we recolor it. And then maybe there might be some office stuff to throw in, but I think I really want to keep this pretty residential. So that one I think is just going to be too big. But this is a little bit like what I have in mind. So I want to be really intentional with exactly what I put where, especially like on this peninsula. I think it would be cool to keep this little cove area. So I was going to take probably an alley, or maybe let's try our custom parking alley and see if we can kind of, if it makes sense to probably, well, we can flip it the other way, but like wrap this around like that. And then let's just flip it so that our parking is on the other side. Yeah, I think that can work. And then obviously we'll need to connect it. So let's just get rid of the end of that. And then we can throw that down. And that can meet up there. And then we can kind of get some of these. Let's see, like kind of work in these kind of buildings. Let's actually also get rid of all these trees. We're gonna fill all this stuff in with our own tree layout stuff. So we'll just might as well just get rid of all of this. I'm kind of leaving a lot of this stuff in as we work on other places, just so the whole area doesn't feel too bare. But now that we're here, I think it makes sense just to kind of get rid of this stuff so we can have room, and we'll obviously fill all these trees back in, you know, where they make sense for us. So yeah, I think having stuff like this, these kind of big, really modern, fancy apartments, kind of along this cove, I thought would be cool. That one's a little too repetitive, but like I think this one will work really well. Maybe we can even get this one out here on the end. Let's see, I'm not sure which side it needs the street on. I guess like that, probably. This one might be pushing the realism factor a little bit. I don't know quite if this one would be way out here quite like this, but yeah, I definitely just want this to be kind of a unique and clearly kind of higher end modern residential area. So let's see what else we can probably mix in. Some of these smaller ones, just so I don't want everything to be, you know, this giant building, but that doesn't look great on the end. So maybe we can kind of stick this over here. And get some of this in. Let's make sure we can, yeah, get rid of that kind of yellow that already is working. And I think I'm not quite nailing it with the turquoise on this one. Let's kind of fade that down a little more subtle. So this is the gist of what I had in mind. I think we'll probably need we'll need some more cross streets, obviously, but I think that a lot of that is going to be determined by, you know, where, like, the footprint of a lot of the buildings we place. So, which one is not? Oh, is this the front of this one? Oh, it is. Interesting. So that's the back. So we might have to, this one might not work there because I just don't like those big flat panels. Something like this, I think, though, will. Maybe we keep this a bit of a high-rise thing. And like, again, with this one, where this is the side, I think this is a good opportunity to go ahead and create some kind of side roads that are coming off. And I guess that would have worked for that other one, but so I'm not sure why we're still getting these. There we go. Yeah, I don't quite know what that's about. But either way, I think maybe move this guy back a bit. So that's kind of what I have in mind. And then for this little island, I thought it actually might be nice just to have some single family housing. It'd be kind of a crazy place for it. And would be almost more of a Florida type thing, which is obviously a very different region than we're kind of turning this into. But I thought it might be a unique little area. I don't know that. I mean, there certainly are single family homes on the water in Vancouver, but they are kind of across from the main island of the, it's not really an island, I guess it's more of a peninsula, but they're not really in the main, like, Vancouver kind of core. There are single family homes, but they're more in the middle. I think for the most part, stuff on the coast are these kind of larger modern structures. So, but yeah, I thought this could be kind of just something different, something to make it a little unique. And I don't even know if we'd be able to fit any out here, but let's just take a quick look at some of our single family homes, and they would have to certainly be probably all level 5. And just kind of this, a bit of this look. Yeah, I mean, man, these are even tighter than I realized. But I mean, there was only going to be, you know, really a handful. I mean, this is pretty exclusive housing. But I thought it would be just something a little different. And we'll have to adapt our I really like the shape of the way that this kind of island is, but we might have to adapt it a little bit just to make sure, you know, that some of these will actually fit, but not, I don't want to change it too much. So I think this is more or less kind of what I was thinking. And let's see if we can get a depth of 3 there. Yeah, this feels very Florida-y, but I think it's kind of cool. So, and after, you know, eventually, if we feel like this feels weird, we could probably maybe move into some more apartment stuff with this. But I thought it could be a fun little thing to try, and we'll see how we feel about it later. So I'm gonna go through and we'll get some crossroads in, and we'll fill a bunch of this out with some buildings, and then we'll check in here in a few. All right, so that is a pretty, I would say, more than a start. I'd say that's a pretty substantial chunk of this. So we got a little bit of road funk going on here, but yeah, this is definitely what let's just erase that and start over. This is definitely what I had in mind. I'd say that if anything, my thought is that it does feel like a fairly significant outlier to the way, you know, the kind of downtown we have going on. You know, you're looking at this like that, and then you come over here, and even looking at a neighborhood over here like Buckman Point is very, you know, but, and, you know, as I'm pulling it from Vancouver, you know, all of Vancouver is kind of like this. And so we're mixing some stuff, but I think that's okay. I wanted this to be a very distinct type of neighborhood and area. So I think we've done that. And I think the challenge now will be kind of bridging these two together so that they don't feel, you know, that they feel like they blend as naturally as possible. But I think that'll be what I think actually might work pretty well for that would be a lot of the urban promenade stuff. I think will really help kind of bridge that gap, because it is, you know, there is these kind of modern looking stuff, but there's a bit of that more kind of traditional look to some of these, you know. I mean, obviously it's probably not a good example, but I think there is some like that. I think is a good. That's, you know, kind of got a brick-ish looking front, but it's still modern, and I think it'll be a good transition. And we might even throw some of these in here just to help fill in some of the gaps, as well as make that transition make even more sense when you start to see, you know, some of these type of buildings that we have in here, you know, pop up elsewhere. So I think what's really going to bring this area together will be filling in all of this stuff with parking and trees and plazas and really, you know, making this, because that's a lot of what you see in Vancouver. You see buildings that are not like super close together, and then they're just filled with trees and walkways and quay walls and, you know, stone, kind of the rock reef stuff like we have here. And I think once that all gets in here, I think this is really gonna feel really, really cool. So one thing though that I was looking at, so we have this, you know, the way that our highway comes down and you can kind of see the view you get. But when you're driving into town this way, you know, now we do have a bit of that view there. And so I was thinking, like, what is the thing you really are going to see? And it's basically what sits here as kind of that big iconic building. And I put it over here, but I'm actually thinking we might try and put this right here and see how that looks. And now it might just block all this and feel weird, and maybe we want to let that sit on its own. But let's see if I think that's kind of nice to have. You know, you come down here and there's just kind of this one building looming a bit. The other thing I'm excited about is, I think we'll have a lot more through traffic here on Highway 101. And so right now you've seen a lot of traffic here, but it all kind of exits here onto Lilac Street, or we get a lot of traffic off onto Aspen Street. And then of course a bit more over here on, what is this? Summit Street. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more traffic coming to the termination of our highway here. And I might end up changing this little bit, because I think it's going to end up leaving us with kind of a weird isolated stuff. And so I thought it was cool, but it might not be working out quite the way I want it to, because I think if we get this filled in, that'll just feel a little better. So yeah, I think that is feeling like a pretty good you know, start to all this. I want to jump around a little bit. The other thing I wanted to touch on was, well, two things. One, I did do some district naming. I went with Fremont Yards for this kind of semi-industrial, semi-civic area. We obviously have the train yards, and I'm not sure exactly where to place this, but we'll have this great muscle car garage, and we'll have a little bit more industry, and this will be a bit more of a kind of in-between urban area. And then I also went ahead and gave this side a name with, and let's see exactly where that cuts off. So this here is going to be Bayside. I was thinking about something like Ocean Beach, which we have in San Diego and San Francisco, but this is kind of really, you know, there is a bay here. So I think if we end up with a beach somewhere else, more ocean facing, Although I guess I didn't even really realize that this is not a buildable area, but that there is so much more mountain over there. So this whole thing is pretty closed in, but yeah, Ocean Beach obviously didn't make a ton of sense. So one thing though I did want to do was look at some low income housing, or some forget exactly what it's called, from the, let's see, from the vanilla medium density. Wasn't there a low density? No, there was I think it was residential low rent. Yeah, this low rent housing is what I wanted to do, because I think this area, I don't like, I think right away, like these apartments I'm going to get rid of, because I think those are feeling a little too modern. And I want to make this a bit more of a transitional area and a bit more of a low income area where, and also we'll get rid of this guy, where we have apartments and public housing and that kind of stuff mixed in with some of these civic buildings. We've got a city office here. We've got the welfare office. We've got the citizen service center. And so I wanted to look at that. So let's just go ahead and search by low rent, and looks like we're only looking at the China packs right now. So let's get all of them in there, and we might even just stick with some of the base game stuff, because I think some of these did, yeah, like these real kind of block. There were some I remember that were very, had that kind of yeah, these. So I also was thinking that I wanted to make sure that our height wasn't flattening out too much here. I do want to keep this up a bit. So so yeah, I just wanted to throw a couple of these in here and make sure that we were getting enough of, and actually maybe we move these kind of all over to this back row here. But yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to do was look at a city hall and where we might put that, because you know, realistically, we probably should have put it, you know, like somewhere over here. But I think it's going to be okay to move it off to the side a bit. We do have this civic district, and you know, you kind of think of having City Hall in a more, or, you know, downtown or kind of a more upscale area. But you know, in San Francisco, for one, I know that City Hall, the area around City Hall, is not the best neighborhood in the city. And so I think that actually makes sense to not have this big, grand, fancy kind of town hall or city hall in kind of this big, you know, big park area and all this plaza stuff. And I wanted to just kind of go with more of an understated city hall. I do still want to, you know, find a good building for it. There are a couple here. This one I think is pretty good. We are going to have to figure out, you know, exactly where this is going to fit. It does fit pretty perfectly here, except of course for the street going through it. But let's see if there's another one we like. That's the welfare office. So that one's really big. I think central bank, that's going to be huge. Welfare office. That's a city hall. But see, that's kind of the one I'm trying to avoid. So I think, yeah, I think we're going to go with this just kind of more civic looking one. So let's go ahead and we'll just get rid of that. And we will, you know, this will give it a little bit of prominence, since we'll have the streets going around it instead of, you know, off to the, just tucked away in a corner somewhere. We will have it kind of be in its own little area here. And then we can just move this road back so that we can actually fit it in there perfectly. Yeah, and we'll massage that in a bit. And then maybe we even go ahead and we can kind of, so we're going to obviously move these a bit. We'll just kind of drop these here for the moment. I wonder if we go with kind of a, get rid of this and do like a kind of a split thing. So let's see, we'll take this 4-lane road that we have here, and that is not it. That's a bridge. So we'll put this in here, and then I wonder if we do kind of like a, you know, this kind of a thing. So let's see, we'll line that up right about like that and take it over. And then, you know, we can come back and so that at least we are giving it, you know, now we definitely have like, clearly this is its own, you know, it feels, a lot of city halls do have this kind of like prominent location thing going on, and this does give it that, while also not making it, you know, some big downtown, you know, city focused thing. So I think something like this will be pretty good here. So I'm just gonna, oh yeah, well we'll deal with that in a second. I'm just gonna massage this road in here a little bit. Let's see exactly how we kind of want this to be. And then we'll probably move it to stretch these out a bit and just make that a little, yeah, there we go. That's kind of what we want to do. And then we will turn, let's just use the lane connector tool, and we'll get rid of these U-turns. There'd be no reason to do that. And we certainly will not want we won't want crosswalks here, and we won't want a light. We'll just let that be kind of a nice thoroughfare. We probably also don't want a right turn there. So let's just go ahead and go back to this. Oh boy. So that's all good. That'll work. And then coming on this side, that's a bit of a tough turn. That we definitely don't want. So we should probably move it and take a look at how we can just, there we go, make that a little more like a, yeah, the way that this is kind of like a pentagon shape, I think is going to be a little more beneficial. And then we'll go back to our lane connector tool here and just make sure that these are all kind of going. So maybe we'll take that into there so that this one can go there. That works. That I think works. Yeah. So this can kind of turn itself into a nice little park. And then the other thing I wanted to look at was this. So we kind of fixed this a bit, and we have this kind of big open green area that I've just kind of been sitting on because I'm not totally sure what I wanted to do. If I obviously don't want to make it, you know, too big and high and kind of just fill in this whole area and make this whole middle of the city kind of get lost, especially with this awesome building here. Let's see if we even make this a little more kind of bright and prominent there. And so I was just kind of thinking, you know, what do we do here? So do we want to do a park? I think this will be a bit of a green space and kind of replace the way we had a park leading up to this before. But I think for the rest of it, we just want to kind of fill it in with some lower level stuff. And what I had kind of been doing was just filtering by, let's get all of our stuff reset. And yeah, just filtering by signature buildings. And I'm not, what am I? There's got to be a filter on here somewhere that I'm not. So yeah, just filtering here by signature buildings. And there are a number of them that we can kind of start to fit in here that I thought would fit really nicely. One of which was, where is it? This one. I thought this would fit really nicely right there, and we can just move this over just a touch, I think. Just enough to kind of let that sit in there. Well, at least will, I think, ultimately feel fairly intentional. So yeah, so that I thought was a nice building to fit in there. And then let's take a look at what else we have. I just want some of these lower, 3 or 4 stories, but like with a larger footprint. So let's see, there's a few here that I had found. So this one I thought fit pretty nicely there. And then actually we have the Fashion Square already. Some of this, like something like that, maybe could fit there pretty good. Maybe we can even fit 2 of these. No, that one's a little too long. And let's just kind of go through. I think this is going to be too big. Yeah, it's quite a bit big. And this one, yep. That kind of doesn't make sense. Something that might work. Kind of a little downtown. No, it's not quite going to fit. There were a few I had found. Oh, I think we already have, this over there, but this I think fits so well and works exactly for what, or does it not quite fit? I think we can make it fit. And that feels like a very kind of downtown building. Let's see if we actually can get this to, is that quite good? Yeah, that'll work. And this, I think we can just scoot over a bit, and that's going to work. I think we can even kind of, just to be a little more symmetrical, we can bring this over to kind of match what we were doing over there. We might end up redrawing these at some point. These are starting to get a little, if you really start messing with adjusting roads you've already built, they can get a little wonky, and it tends to make sense to just redraw them where you actually want them. But so yeah, that's getting there, and I think we can probably find some more stuff to fit. Well, that's a big boy. That I don't think is going to fit, but that could actually fit over here maybe. Or we might actually, I think this is the mall. Maybe this could be something good to maybe get. Oh, but this is bigger than it looks. It could maybe fit here though. We're just going to drop that there for now, and we can come back to it. But yeah, I mean, I'll go through here and see what else we can probably find, something else to fill this stuff in. And maybe it's not one of these signature buildings, but yeah, these are just a little too big. Movie theater would have been nice, but again, just a little too big. So, but I think that's kind of a start, and I'll find some other things that fit. But that way you at least get some, to use a more natural analogy, kind of some foothills up to our larger buildings here. And I think that will serve nicely to make this start to feel a little more complete, because I think it just wasn't quite, this whole downtown's feeling great, except we just had this big green area that obviously didn't feel complete. So this is going to be a good start. So I'm going to go through and throw some detail around some various places out here a little bit, and over here and back in our kind of Civic area, and then we'll check back in and wrap things up. All right, so clearly there is still quite a bit to do here, but I wanted to give you guys a rough idea of kind of what this is going to look like, and I think we can start to see, you know, the look we're going for here. So, in terms of this kind of area and residential neighborhood out here on the coast, I think we got a really cool mix of these really modern high-rise buildings and you know, lots of parking, and right out here on the water, we got some tennis courts, and over here, you know, lots of trees and some parkland and places to walk and little coastal paths and all that. So, yeah, this is definitely more or less what I had in mind, and I'll get in here and fill out stuff with, you know, some parking and some more trees and some surface stuff, and get this feeling nice and final. And then we got this kind of going, which I think finally makes our downtown actually feel mostly done. We still have to fill out this area and kind of get our river bed and kind of river coastline here tidied up, but that's looking good. And we got a nice little kind of garden here leading us into our building. And I just think this is finally feeling like a pretty finalized kind of downtown area. And then we got our city hall in with a little kind of park, and we got some you know, some low rent housing here, and we'll get more going on here in Fremont Yards. So let me know if you have any other thoughts about what we can add to this neighborhood to kind of keep it grungy and inner city, and you know, feeling real civic, and yeah. So very quickly, the last thing I want to do with this island is, this thing is just huge and it's ruining sight lines from all over the map, and so I just want to push this down a bit. We're still going to keep this island here, but I just think that at the way that this it's just a giant mountain out here on this island. I mean, it's taller than all of our downtown, so it's just feeling a little much. So I just wanted to quickly just kind of push it down. And you know, what we do at this island is still kind of up in the air. We've had, you know, some people kind of said make it an Alcatraz, which is an interesting idea. Some people have talked about a resort. And I think the biggest problem really is that it's a little tough because it's not very big, and all the, you know, we don't have a small ferry deck kind of ferry station. Everything is a bit large, so it kind of takes up a lot of the room. So I don't know if we may just kind of end up keeping this. Oh, that got a little lower than I wanted. We may kind of keep up. We may end up just kind of keeping this a little fairly natural and throwing some trees on there. And yeah, you know, to make it an Alcatraz thing, we'd need to make a bridge out here, which would be coming out of what, like this neighborhood we just built would be an odd place to have a road out to a prison, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we'll necessarily need to do anything here, but I just think more than anything, I just wanted to bring this down so that we could kind of get a bit more of our sight lines looking a little bit better from various places along the map, and not have the skyline silhouette kind of be flushed out by this crazy big. So now you can actually see from this. Before, you would see this thing, you know, up here, and now I think that's looking a lot better. So thanks a lot for watching, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.